Hello, welcome to today's edition of the Academy. Today we're going to continue our walk through Sun Tzu's Art of War, Chapter 7. Now we're going to start sentence 12, go through actually only sentence 22. This is a peculiar chapter because sentence 23 and beyond looks like it's part of a different book that has been woven into this particular Art of War book. So we'll talk about that in the next video, but today we're going to focus on the kind of the middle section. Now, sentences 12 through 14 don't really apply to tabletop, really in any way at all. It's kind of even hard to put them into elements of a scenario, because he's talking more about entering into alliances by understanding what your neighbors are after, and trying to know the terrain. But knowing the terrain from the perspective of being the person who's a resident, so you should have some local guides or whatever. That's really what he's trying to get to. Sentences 15 through 22, with the exception of 20, are the ones we're going to cover today. Alright, so let's just kind of dive in and walk through this. Again, covering the concept of maneuvering. Sentence 15. In war, practice dissimulation and you will succeed. Whether to concentrate or to divide your troops must be decided by circumstance. Let your rapidity be that of the wind, your compactness that of the forest. In raiding and plundering be like fire, in immovability like a mountain. Let your plans be dark and impenetrable as night, and when you move, fall like a thunderbolt. Ponder and deliberate before you make a move. He will conquer who has learnt the artifice of deviation. Such is the art of maneuvering. Okay. So let's kind of break this down. He's really, this is a nice batch of sentences that puts together the whole concept of maneuver and really knits it into some of the previous topics. So the first sentence includes a strange word that you probably haven't used much called dissimulation. Now that really means hiding under a false pretense. So what Sun Tzu is advocating here are situations where you are presenting yourself, your army, to the opponent in such a way that it does not really, it tells them an opposite story or a different story than what's really in front of them. So you'll be hiding, for example, strengths. You'll be hiding intentions. You may be hiding each individual's unit's strengths or weaknesses, even what they're capable of, simply because the way you're putting the units on the table, or where you're putting them, or how you're putting them in reserve, those are kind of masking what it is you're really going to be doing with them. If you think about this sentence, it goes back to previous chapters where you're talking all about deception. It's exactly what you're trying to do here. In order to win, you need to use deception, but he's speaking here in movement, so in maneuvering. So by hiding your intentions, hiding your direction, where you're going to be heading, taking these different units, you're really going to throw your opponent off, because they're not going to be able to plan and react until hopefully the last moment. In sentence 16, he mentions whether to concentrate or divide your troops must be decided by circumstances. So again here, he's reinforcing points mentioned earlier. You have to have some flexibility and allow yourself the ability to disengage your units from each other or bring them back together based on the circumstances. You may want to deploy in a group, deploy them all, deploy them sparingly, spread them out, put them close together. It all depends on the circumstances. There is no hard and fast rule. Always do this, never do that. Okay, it's by circumstances. So think about it in this way. I'm going to use the concept where earlier in a previous video, even outside of Sun Tzu, we were talking about concentrating your forces to focus the might of your army against a smaller portion of your opponents, almost getting a firepower advantage, a combat capability advantage. Now that is a great thing to do, but there may be situations where you don't want to do that. Circumstances would dictate against it. For example, if your opponent has weapon systems that can drop ordnance, large area effect weapons, on your troops under concentration, then you really don't want to bring them close together. Yes, it might be tactically wise under normal circumstances, but in this particular circumstance, it isn't. So that has to factor into, okay? So be flexible. Do what is required by the current circumstance. Now, he starts with sentence 17 some analogies or similes. Really, it's really I kind of like them. But in the case of whenever you have similes or metaphors, it takes a little bit of thought to really pick out what he's trying to say, and in fact, there may be biases that may help you miss the mark. Even previous commentators may not exactly get it. There's disagreement among different commentators on what the sentences are really saying. So let's take a crack at them. In sentence 17, and 18 I really kind of like, but I kind of differ a little bit with what some of the commentators say. So let's look. 17 is, let your rapidity be that of the wind, your compactness be that of the forest. Now, I hope I get this right. Mei Yao Chen is one of the commentators. He related this wind to the idea of being invisible and leaving no traces. So moving your troops under cover where they can't be observed. That's what he was focusing on. Meng Shi actually says when slowly marching, your order has to be preserved. And he's looking at the forest. So to guard against surprise attacks, you need to kind of keep yourself in order of some sort. But if you notice, a forest is compact, but it doesn't grow in neat straight rows. Orchards do, but we're talking natural forest. And yet, even though they're not in nice rows, they are dense. And so what he's trying to come out at is make sure your units are close enough together they can support, they're together, you can control them, but you don't need to be in hard lines and battle order, marching in columns and rows the whole time. That actually could be a disadvantage. Now, I want to kind of look at this from a slightly different perspective. I want to keep with Sun Tzu's theme of dissimulation. So, looking at the wind portion of this sentence, I take the analogy to mean take the rapidity not of the speed or the stealth, but it's how suddenly and how quickly wind direction can change. And there's really no predictor of it. You can't see the wind about to change. It simply does. And if you think about what he's been talking about in previous chapters, the need to be flexible as circumstances dictate, it's a very good analogy because as the wind moves, it will suddenly shift. So as your army moves, it encounters a certain situation, it needs to suddenly shift and to do whatever it needs to do. Again, that's going to take a lot of practice to be able to identify those situations and the appropriate responses. Remember, there's not just one answer for each dilemma. So, kind of think in those terms when it comes to the wind analogy here. As far as the forest, I kind of do like what Meng Shi is saying, because what he's trying to get at is you want to keep yourself close enough together so that you can control everything. The units are mutually supporting, but you don't want them in such a compact formation that any attempt to maneuver them to respond to a threat is hampered by, battle lines. For example, if you had I'm assuming something more like a Warhammer Fantasy situation as opposed to Warhammer 40k or Flames of War. If you've got a column of troops in order, if they're too close and they're nice and orderly, it's going to be difficult to maneuver them to respond to any threat, regardless where it comes. If you have things a little bit more spread out, disarray, not quite lined up in a perfect row or column, you'll have a little more tactical flexibility, maneuvering flexibility, so that no matter where the threat comes from, the units shouldn't get in the way of each other. So again, the idea of looking at a forest, you got trees of all different sizes growing, in what appears to be a random fashion, but they're all fairly close to one another. In your army, you'll have units of different sizes and capabilities, all relatively close to each other, so they can actually support one another whenever the threat approaches. All right, now in 18, I love this one because it's almost two opposites in this. In raiding and plundering be like fire, yet be in immovability, be like a mountain. So either you're going to be act like fire or you act like a mountain. Well, they're two different things completely, and the nature's different. So Xi Ching, kind of tried to emphasize the fact that, in this, be like a fierce blazing fire that no one can check. But when you think of fire, you think of hot, intense, destructive, and you focus on. But I don't think that hits the mark here. I think really what Sun Tzu is saying, again, this idea of dissimulation and maneuvering, that's the context of the chapter. What happens with fire? Let's look at a forest fire. Now, these things are large. They're obviously going to move from areas where they've already burned up the fuel to places where there's fuel to be burned. You have almost a predictable path. However, those fires, as large as they are, can very quickly, very suddenly, and very rapidly change because they're influenced by several factors. The available fuel, the moisture in the surrounding area, and the wind, and strength, direction, and humidity. All those factors dictate the capability of that fire to swiftly change direction. And that is what he's saying. So in raiding and plundering, be unpredictable. Obviously, the opponent knows you're going to be going after supplies, stores. There's going to be obvious targets, but keep them guessing about where you're going to actually go and rapidly redeploy, again, based on the situation. So I think that's really what Sun Tzu is getting at with it when he talks about comparing it to fire. Not blazing and intense, but rapidly shifting based on the situation. Now, the opposite of that was in immovability. I love trying to say that, like a mountain. So now here we're talking about a fire moving rapidly, and now a mountain that doesn't move at all. Well, I think what he's trying to get at here talks more to things about previous chapters, where you cannot let yourself change your tactics, your approach, based on the bait that your opponent's going to lay out. So if you ever tried to move a mountain, none of us really have tried to, but think of it, there is absolutely no way you can move a mountain itself. Okay? In order to move a mountain, you need earth-moving equipment, and you literally have to tear it down. You can't even rebuild it. It's destroyed. So think in terms of that as the analogy when it comes to this whole bait thing. When you're doing all these raids or attacks in certain locations, and your opponent tries to draw you off of your plan with some enticing bait, don't bite. Don't go for that. Be immovable like the mountain. The only way he can move you off of your plan is to destroy you, which obviously is not going to be difficult if you're keeping a good presence of mind. So I think that's really what he's trying to get at in this one sentence, sentence 18. So in sentence 19, he talks about letting your plans be dark and impenetrable as night, and when you move, fall like a thunderbolt. Now, this is actually, I didn't think about this one before, but as actually a commentator helped me realize in this one, there's a saying by Tai Kung, which, it's an ancient saying that actually, I guess, become a Chinese proverb at some point. Don't know exactly how they translate it, but the idea is that you can't shut your ears to thunder. You can't cover your eyes to lightning because it happens so rapidly, right? And if you think back in the previous chapters, one of the concepts that Sun Tzu talked about was decision, decisiveness. Like that crossbow suddenly releasing its energy in that decisive moment, boom. Well, that's like a thunderbolt. He talked about lightning in those sentences too, I believe. Now, so here you are, being dark and impenetrable as night as far as your plans, so your opponent doesn't really know what's going on. So that when you move and you're on that decisive point, you strike quickly. Again, alluding back to previous chapters. Now, skip 20, sentence 20, because it really talks about logistics, in this case, dividing spoils, which we don't do in our games. But sentence 21 is a very interesting sentence. It's simply ponder and deliberate before you make a move. So if thinking in terms of chess, you don't really move until you've really thought things through. Obviously, in a battle, you don't have that kind of luxury all the time. But what it's really trying to say, if you go back to chapter 4, in sentence 17, it was talking about there's the military method, 5 methods. The first 4 are the key ones here. You need to do these things in order to succeed. And it's measurement, estimation, calculation, and balancing the risks. That's the pondering, creating the plans. You need to do that before you make a move. Now, obviously, you're not going to have days or hours to do this. You have to do it turn by turn. So you need to develop the ability to quickly work through these, measuring, estimation, calculation, risk assessment, so that when you are seeing your opponent do something, you can come up with a plan and then execute that, knowing you've done the proper calculations, you've thought it through. It's not just a reactionary move, okay? And then finally, he will conquer who has learnt the artifice of deviation. Such is the art of maneuvering. Now, this is amazing because it's basically just reiterating what he said back on sentences 3 and 4. It's almost bookends to this chapter. Now, what's interesting is, as mentioned, this is the only sentence 22, and there's 30-some sentences in this. Yet, this seems to be a natural end. So that is where we're going to end this particular video, but let me explain why. The next segment, which we'll cover in the next part 3 of chapter 7, is a section that does not really appear to be Sun Tzu's original work. It's, in fact, he quotes out of the Book of Army Management. So we don't know where that is, or I don't think there's any surviving copies, but it's almost a summary of here's some key points out of this book you guys are used to using, and I want to weave these in to make sure you understand these are critical to your success as a general. So that's where we're going to pause here, and we're going to pick that almost a appendix to chapter 7 in the next video. So I hope you learned something on this. Please share, like, and subscribe, and ask questions below. I'll answer as they come. All right. Thank you very much. See you in the next video. Bye-bye.